But as bad as hanging and murder sounds, there was a worse fate to face some of Gaddafi's political opponents. This clip from 2011 captures the moment prisoners were liberated from the infamous Abu Sleem prison in the capital Tripoli when revolutionary fighters arrived. The torture and breach of human rights committed at this political prison served as a major catalyst for the uprising against the regime, culminating with the 1996 massacre. It began when some inmates revolted against the guards in one of the cell blocks on the 28th of July 1996 at 4 a.m. when the inmates' conditions had deteriorated from bad to worse. Some inmates were refrained from seeing the sun for years, let alone months. Some cells were occupied by over 20 inmates without beds or blankets. When the mutiny took place, the guards fled the prison, and the freed prisoners began to release the other inmates from other blocks. The guards regrouped and took to the roofs of the cell blocks and began to open fire, killing 9 and wounding 17. They continued to fire upon the prisoners until Gaddafi's right-hand man and head of his intelligence agency arrived and ordered a halt to the shooting. He was informed of the situation, and he called for 4 negotiators to come forward from each block. When the negotiations began, it was clear that these men were only seeking their basic human rights. They asked for visitation rights, bearing in mind some of these inmates had not heard or seen a family member in decades. They asked for a judicial process, as most inmates had been incarcerated without any trial or jury. They asked for medicine, as some were suffering from severe respiratory problems due to not breathing fresh air in months or years. They also had dermatological problems from a lack of access to the sun and poor hygiene in the cells from overcrowding. Sunusi, the head of intelligence, reply was to convince the men to return to their cells and that he would guarantee to fulfill the requests, bar a judicial process, which he said was beyond his capability. As a show of good faith, Sunusi accepted a condition of the prisoners to hospitalize approximately 120 inmates, who were some from long-term and contagious illnesses, in return for a swift return of the inmates to their cells. The next day at 4 a.m., the inmates, still hopeful for some form of better treatment, felt something was awry, as the guards began segregating and separating them into groups. Groups with those with political crimes remaining in their blocks, while those with lesser or non-political crimes being sent to a nearby building. At 11 a.m. that same day, a hand grenade was thrown into the prison yard, and a rally of heavy gunfire was set upon the remaining inmates while in their yards from the rooftops. The gunfire continued non-stop for approximately 3 hours. Then began the sound of pistol fire, synonymous with a point-blank finishing round to those who were still alive yet injured. The screams of the inmates was frightening. By 2 p.m., the shooting had stopped, and everything was quiet and serene as if nothing had happened. It was 2 days later before eyewitnesses saw the bodies of at least 1,200 men being carried out of the prison yards on wheelbarrows. They would testify that the walls of the cell blocks were blackened with splashes of dried blood, and there was not an inch that did not have a bullet hole. Spent cartridges littered the floor. A stench of death filled the air. So it is easy to see the elation on these prisoners' faces is not unfounded, considering they would have expected a similar fate. This video is in August 2011, but let me take you back to where it all began. Take you back to February 17th. Take you back to when the brave had finally cried out that they had had enough. And what brought me from the comfort of my home in Dublin to join them in their quest against this desperate despot and become one of the lions of the Tripoli Brigade.
But our first guest this morning is a Dublin man who worked as a builder for 10 years before downing tools and taking a different career path.
Sam Najjair was deeply disturbed by images of abuse and violence against innocent people in war-torn Libya and decided he had to take action.
He travelled to Tripoli himself where he played a key role in the effort to bring down the dictator.
Stories of the liberation struggle are still emerging. Margaret Ward spoke with Housam, an Irish Libyan from Fir House in Dublin, who's been fighting on the rebel side for the past few months, first in the mountains and then in Tripoli.
Housam Najjair, also known as Sam, has a Libyan father and an Irish mother. The 32-year-old flew in from Dublin to liberate his father's homeland. Before the war, he worked in construction.